The traditional business model is like a linear process in a single direction. Most of the time, it's looking for an only final result, such as the profit. It expects that the model should work like a machine, usually simple, like one production chain that transforms raw materials into final physical products, for which it uses mainly physical capital, be it human or technological. The feasibility analysis for this business project often uses valuation methods that are mostly static, with simple formulas with few variables. To get a result quickly, these methods tend to disregard most of the constraints, whether the business internals, whether it's externals. Mainly, they are analysis models with a deterministic basis, which were inspired by the mechanical physics of the 18th century, released by Isaac Newton. The first economic models, developed by Adam Smith and afterwards by David Ricardo in the early 19th century, applied those scientific concepts. And even today, they still prevail in many current economic decisions. For most and simple cases, these methods are more than enough. These are, for example, the traditional methods of real estate evaluation that serve to evaluate the most current properties, as long as they are very standardized in the market. However, for the most complex cases, such as in business assessments, some analysis already requires stochastic models to pass the alleged reality with probabilistic methods. And sometimes they require multiple variables. However, in the current world, it does not be compatible with realities so standardized or so simple and stable as it considered in traditional models, as it tends to be more complex. Due to the explosive fluidity and speed in the exchange of data and information among people and things, increasingly in a micro and or nano dimension, without geographic limits, it can generate consequences with much higher intensity and dissemination. The business best succeeded in the 21st century to create high value are relying on extensive chains of value, increasingly complex but tough to control. So, successful businesses in the future will no longer be able to be explained by deterministic models or even stochastic ones. The risk of having large deviations from the predicted goals, so often optimistic, non-exempts, or through a very basic analysis, may lead to the entrepreneur bankruptcy. This could be the case of those who develop and manage real estate projects in the context of a much more competitive and open world of the 21st century. That will certainly be for the real estate developer who needs to look for investment capital in foreign markets. It understands that the real estate developer is the one who uses the planet's natural resources, such as its surface, plus raw materials, and transform them to provide useful and attractive ambiences for space users that we are, all of us. The traditional real estate development process, still very current, follows the classic model, which is linear, with a greater focus on tangible inputs, because they are the most obvious in their appearance. In this model, the view for value creation reflects more on the tangible flows from the ownership rights on the property, of the building materials or the labor, but less on information flows that are due to the rational processes, such as for the technical support and management of the real estate business. In this context, because of the usual decapitalization of the major agents, such as the developer, a typical real estate business tends to be a process full of interim transactions, from the idea to the product delivery, in which the information, usually poor, that is generated throughout the process tends to be lost. This situation implies a high waste of resources and generates many errors, which is common for less developed nations. So they tend to be less rich. This kind of markets tends to be dominated by trade, so it privileges the transaction of real properties, but this approach doesn't help to create a whole wealthy society, compared with the strategy for the long term. However, this model benefits the state because it generates several taxes, such as due to property transactions or the construction VAT. The bank sector has much helped the traditional business process. Banks need to ongoing and riskless long-term income for themselves, such as the housing credit. In this context, even entrepreneurs with little knowledge of the business got the momentum and trust to risk on it. They tend to limit themselves to a short and straightforward chain of essential activities. Almost all are very tangible, which begins with the land acquisition and ownership, but often without a sensitive and a dedicated risk analysis. It passes through the courage and ability to get construction permission from municipal authorities, which often are less dynamic and objective, or when they have to rapidly realize what is visible to obtain timely enough capital from the bank, often building with less than minimum care, and then getting to market, so often with a poor quality product, not innovative, to sell quickly to anyone who passes next to the building. Unfortunately, these inputs tend to be accepted tacitly by the traditional developer who does not challenge the current situation in the market, already formatted in all minds, and thus does not seek other solutions or alternative interventions. Then, other agents in the business process may impair some unprepared developers, which don't have a choice to other business models. As for the former, it may refer especially those with high negotiating power, such as the land owners when the market is up. In this sense, four business functions tend to be absorbed almost all costs in traditional real estate development, maybe 80–90% of the total project investment. In the defensive mind of the traditional conservative developer runs out the margin to accept other functions that could improve the project performance. This classic model tends not to value rational work because it's not so visible and whose result is not directly measured, to focus on what is tangible, which flows on the human scale, such as physical work, the materials, or the land possession. As the project viability depends more on the cost method and the comparative method, it's easier to adopt an account-based approach as a way to achieve the profit than a strategic and holistic vision. Thus, in this perspective, profit can only be optimized by minimizing or even cutting the costs of factors such as labor, materials, and external services. Some examples are the elaboration of the design, architecture, and technical information, or even the valuation. In this view, an iceberg-based action model can be suggested, considering only the visible part, above the water with 1/9 of the total value, but omits or postpones for future problems today not evident, which will certainly be much superior in the future. Another evidence of this traditional model, whenever neglects rational tasks, tend to waste resources and accumulate errors. These inefficiencies imply high costs, low productivity, or the business rigidity that limits change to adapt to the market. The effectiveness loss of traditional business processes leads to loss of competitiveness, to low wages, to low quality products. To stay afar in this new world of the fourth industrial revolution, traditional businesses may enter in a vicious cycle that requires an increasing effort in physical world and of external suppliers. More and more cheap. But this approach tends to generate worse outputs. It increasingly reminds the tale of the punishment of Sisyphus, the Greek king who was punished for eternally pushing a large stone up the mountain and then to let it roll and start the cycle again and again, monotonous and routine. Traditional model tends to seem like a function that requires enormous effort, the work of which can even be very efficient, but whose effectiveness is nil, or it ceases to be productive without added value. In the new world of information and communication technologies, artificial intelligence, and in the Internet of Things, new paradigms emerge that prioritize virtual models above and before the reality. The transformation increasingly depends on rationalized processes, creative or even subjective issues related to human dimension. In the emerging new world, the main wealth of nations will not come from the exploration of raw materials or human muscle work, but will derive mainly from the processing of atoms, bits, and genes in an environment of high complexity. The real estate business winning the richest nations will be the one that can evolve and adapt to this new environment. The real estate business winning the richest nations will be the one that can evolve and adapt to this new environment. Click on the like button below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you want to be notified, click on the bell. Thank you!